To get started, we're going to dive right into the customer account here, and we're going to talk a little bit about account credits. So if you want to get to the account credits, we navigate to the customer account, and in the side navigation here, you can see account credits that I've clicked on. The first thing you'll notice here in our test account is that there is a log of all of the credit transactions. An account credit would be a free credit that you want to give to a customer for really any reason that you have. You can see here a lot of it is just our testing. But for instance, if you have a referral program or maybe a service was lacking a little bit and you feel like you want to give someone a credit, you can go ahead and do that from this section. The way that we do that is we just hit the Add Credit button here. We'll fill out an amount, and we can write a description, and this will be logged in the log there, and also if you choose sent to the customer. So we can just say here, and I'm going to go ahead and notify the customer, add it to the account. You'll see that the transaction has shown up in the log. And if I switch over here to our other tab, I have an example of what it looks like when you notify your customer. So it'll just let them know that they have a $25 credit and that the credit has been added to their account for the following reasons. The next thing I want to do is just show you how to remove a credit. So this has come up a couple times in the last week. If you accidentally add a credit you didn't mean to, or the person hasn't used it in such a long period of time that you want to expire it, you can just go over here, click remove. You can choose the amount. I'll do the full $25 here. And we'll just remove that account credit and it's no longer there. So that's pretty much the gist of account credits. When we get into the invoicing, I'll show you a little bit more about how those credits are applied. The next section we have here is a prepaid credit. And a prepaid credit is going to be basically a charged credit for prepaid services. So pretty basic right now. What you would do is figure out how much their invoice is going to be for the services you want. Let's just say we have, to make it easy, $10 appointments, and they're going to get prepay for a whole week at a time. So we'd add a prepaid credit for $50. We have the option here, if your company charges sales tax, to add the sales tax onto the prepaid credit. This way it's covered when you go to apply that credit to the invoice will be paid in full. And prepayment for 5 services. We can notify the customer. It's going to come through exactly the way that it did in the email that I showed you earlier. And we're going to hit charge payment method. And I've gone ahead and put this on a credit card. You do have the option to put it as cash, check, or other. So if the person gives you a check in advance, you can go ahead and add the prepaid credit that way. Want to talk real quick about refunding a prepaid credit. And I'm going to skip ahead a little and talk in the agenda and talk a little bit about PayPal versus credit card. So I'm going to go ahead here and hit the refund button and just say, give a reason here. I'm just going to write test. We'll notify the customer. And you'll see at the bottom here, I have the option to give a partial refund or a full refund. If I go here to the partial refund and I put in $10 and I issue refund, you're going to see an error came up at the top. This is due to Braintree and different regulations surrounding credit card payments. In order to issue a partial refund on a credit card, that credit card transaction has to have settled on the merchant processor side of things. So you're not going to be able to do a partial refund, but what I can show you here is a full refund on a credit card, and that should work just fine. And you can see that that refund's been taken away. If I go to another client that I know to be on PayPal and I issue a credit, so we'll do the same $50 credit. You'll see here the tax is a little different, and we'll get into that a little bit later. And I'll go ahead and charge the payment method. And you can see here it was charged to PayPal. And what I'll do now is go in and do a refund. And we'll say we'll do that for $10. And we'll go ahead and issue that refund. And you can see that that went through successfully. And that's because PayPal settles immediately on the other side, which means that you can issue partial refunds immediately. So just something to keep in mind, if you need to issue a partial refund on a credit card, you're just gonna have to wait until that settles. It can take about 24 hours for that to happen, and you can issue the refund that way. That's also going to apply when we get into the invoices here in just a minute. And when you go to refund those as well, you know, you can do partial refunds for cash, check, other, as well as PayPal. But again, if you want to do a partial refund on a credit card, that's just going to have to wait until it settles. So that's pretty much issuing credits in a nutshell there. What I want to do next is jump into sales tax. And so we're going to go to the settings here. And if your company charges sales tax, you can just go right into the settings under billing and invoices. And you can set a global sales tax rate. One of the things that came up over the last couple of years, actually, that we fixed in this is that you may be working in different municipalities, and those municipalities may each have different sales tax rates. Some of them may charge sales tax, some of them might not. So in that case, what you can do is come back into the customer profile, navigate to payments, and we're going to put in a sales tax override. And what that allows us to do is say that this customer is going to pay 15% instead of that 5%. You may have seen earlier too, when I went into the Call Drago customer, that they had a sales tax rate that was different than that general rate that you saw when I went into Brienne's account. And that's because I had the override already set up. So that's basically how to deal with sales tax in multiple regions. The next thing I'm going to jump into here is going to be the billing. So one of the big features of the new update is what we call real-time invoicing. So if we come here, you'll see that there's a Call Drago invoice for $27.25. And what I'm going to do here is just go into the dashboard. And very quickly, I'm just going to start an appointment for that customer. And we'll come back to the invoicing. And now you can see that this invoice is for $45.95, and that this February 19th appointment that I just started is now part of the invoice. So that's a big change, I think, really well received so far. And you can just watch these invoices build all week. One thing I just want to back out here and show you is the handy graph that we have. This one's a little disjointed on our testing account. But if you look at this February 23rd number, you're going to see at the beginning of the week that that starts off real low. And as your invoices are created from those transactions, as you start appointments, that this number is going to climb throughout the week, and at the end of the week, reach its final destination there. So the next thing I want to do is just go over editing an invoice. For those of you who have been using the software for a while, you'll know that we used to not have the ability to edit line items. What you could do was either issue a credit to deduct money from the invoice, or make an adjustment to add money to the invoice. That's significantly different than what we're doing now. If you need, for instance, to remove medication, maybe this was on the appointment, but subsequently it was realized that the medication wasn't given, hopefully on purpose. We can go ahead and just X that. And it's going to also ask us if we want to remove the payroll entry for that line item. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that intact for now. But if you do remove that checkbox, it will leave the payroll item. So if you're trying to give your customer money off their invoice, but you want to make sure that the sitter gets paid for their work, you can do that by leaving the payroll entry. I'm going to hit continue, and you'll see now that that medication is gone. The next thing that I'm going to do is show you what happens when you eliminate a primary service. So that's this 10-minute walk. And if you eliminate the primary service here, what's going to happen is you have the same option for payroll. I'll hit continue, and you'll see that the primary service as well as all the add-on services were removed. And that's by design. And this way, if you need to remove a whole service from an invoice at once, it's real easy. You just remove the primary service and everything under it will fall out as well. So that's how you can edit an invoice and adjust payroll right from the invoice. The next thing I want to do is get into the expanded more menu. So after launch, we got a lot of good feedback that there were just too many clicks to get from an invoice to a customer account to issue a credit. So what we did is we added those buttons right here into the invoice for you. So similarly to the way that you could do it from the customer profile, you can go ahead and add those credits here. So I'll go ahead and add that $25 credit back. We'll apply the account credit, and you'll see here that there's an applicable credit of $25. Now that hasn't been applied yet. It's just letting you know that that credit is sitting here. And when we go to receive payment on this invoice in a couple minutes, we'll see that at that time the credit will be locked in and the credit will be removed at that time from the customer's account. We also have the ability to add line items. A couple changes here from the last time, or from the last system. You only had the ability to make an adjustment when you were adding it on to an already existing primary service. Now you have the ability to add a primary service line item, or you can add more items to a primary service that always existed. So we're going to click no here because we're not adding to an existing appointment. We'll pick a date. So let's just say it's today, and we'll say 6:45 p.m. Not feeling creative on this one. And we'll add a new line item, let's just say for $30. And we want to add a payroll item. So we'll choose the appropriate person for the payroll, and we'll put in the amount here, and we'll say $15. We'll just assume about 50%. And we'll add that line item. So now you can see here that there's a webinar example line item. If I run over here into the payroll, and you can see there that webinar example does show up in payroll. Jump back over here into the invoice, and we'll go back to the more menu, and we can also add a line item as an addition to an existing appointment. So we're going to do it for this 8:45 appointment. And we'll do this for $5. And maybe in this case, it's not something that has anything to do with having to pay a staff member, so we can just go ahead and add that line item without adding payroll. And you'll see here the test add-on comes up under this service as an add-on. The next thing you can do is add a one-time memo. And so we can do that and just say, I don't know. Save that memo, and that'll show up at the bottom and be pushed out into the email that your customer receives as well. Probably one of our most awaited emails, especially from a customer service standpoint, is the ability to email an invoice to a customer at any time. We used to get a number of support inquiries asking us to forward emails so that you guys could resend them to your customers, and we wanted to make that a lot easier. So you just click this button, and that email has now been sent successfully to the customer. Moving on down the line here, you also have the ability to print an invoice. So we'll just hit print. I don't know how it is on a PC, but on a Mac here, you have the ability to save as a PDF, or this is my home printer, so I can't click on it now, but you can also print it out on a regular printer. And this way you can have the invoice offline in any way that you kind of want. This button is just going to take us back into the customer profile, so we can jump back into that. And that's a perfect time for me to jump into another feature here, which is the ability to edit and manage invoices right from the customer account. You used to be able to see all the invoices that a customer had, but you couldn't edit them from the customer account. And we've added the ability to edit. So all the features that were available in the last screen that we were in are also available here. And then the last thing we can do is view all invoices for this customer right from there, and you can see how that works. So now that I've taken you through the menu and some of the invoicing options, what I want to do here is apply some payments. So we have a credit issued to this account. I'm going to go ahead and hit apply payment. When there's a credit card, you'll have the option to do cash, check, or other. When there's no credit card, this option won't be selectable. You can see that the $40.75 is equal to the service subtotal of $57.50 less the $25 credit. And we can put a note here. And in this case, I'm going to hit charge payment method. And we'll go ahead and close out that invoice with a full payment. I'm going to go into another invoice for the same customer. Oh, real quick before I leave, sorry. You can see that that credit has now been applied, and at the same time, that credit balance has now been dropped down to 0 for that customer. I'm going to go into another invoice now, open that up, and I'm going to go to apply payment. And here I'm going to change this to $30.50 and do credit card. And we're going to do payment 1 of 2. So what I'm doing here is called a split payment. We'll charge the payment method. We'll see here that the balance has been reduced by the amount of the payment, and there's now $30 due. We can go to apply payment again, hit cash, put in a note, and hit apply payment. And you can see now here we have a log of how those payments came in, and we can see that we split the payment among 2 payment methods. The next thing I'm going to do is take you guys through how to do a refund. So what's the refund for? And we have the option to do a partial refund or a full refund. As I mentioned earlier, on a credit card, this is going to be a little bit different in that you can do only a partial credit card refund for PayPal, whereas everything else, and cash, whereas for credit card, it does need to be the full amount. Since we did split this payment, I can go ahead and do a full amount credit card refund and a partial refund on cash check. So maybe we're not refunding everything, we're just doing a little bit of it. And you'll see that went through successfully, and that's because I did refund the entire credit card amount. I'm going to jump back into that invoice we did earlier that had that credit, and I'm going to process a refund here too. I'm going to do a partial refund again. And what you can see here is that I can refund the credit card payment if I do it in whole, but I can also refund the account credit. So I can put this back on the customer's account just by issuing a refund, and you'll see that that $10 refund came back. Now, if this is a circumstance where you really don't want the customer to have that $10 refund, you can just go ahead and afterwards remove it from their account. And now they're back to 0. So that's how refunds work. You can also do a full refund. It's basically the exact same thing that I just showed you. So we'll apply a payment here real quick for $33, charge that payment method, go into refunds here, choose full refund, and that'll just do a full refund without having to enter in any of the information. If it's a multiple payment refund, you know, you're gonna run into the same rules with credit cards, and it should refund the credit card. The only time that you're gonna get into a credit card refund that gets denied when you do a full refund is if you're applying a prepaid credit and then another credit card charge to pay the remainder of the invoice, depending on whether or not you're using the whole prepaid credit and how long you issued it. You could run into some issues there. But again, once you wait the 24 hours, you can do those partial refunds again. So it gets a little hairy. Unfortunately, this is due to like regulation, and there's not a whole lot we can do to change that. But if you run into an issue, go ahead and shoot us a message through support, and we'll try to help you understand why that happened. One of the other things we have here is the ability to show $0 invoices in an open billing period. So if I go ahead and show $0 invoices, oh, I don't think I have any in this period. Let's see if I have any here. We are actually testing a new way of doing this. So I don't think that the show $0 invoices is going to show up on our testing server here. And since we're making a change, it's probably not super worth it to go through that. But if you need to create an invoice for a customer that has not had any transactions, for the time being, you can go into show $0 invoices. That'll pop up invoices for all of your customers here, and you'll be able to open that $0 invoice and add line items the same way that you could do before. Another thing that we have here is the ability to add a line item for $0. This was a requested feature that we added after the release. So if I go in here and add a $0 line item, you can see that that works now. So if that's something you want to do, that option is also available for you. That is pretty much all of the invoicing features and prepayment stuff that we've done. It didn't take me long to go through it, but it certainly took us some time to build it. And we did throw in one last feature that I want to talk to you about, and that is the ability to show pet names in the schedule. This was a huge request that we got a lot. It was significantly more complicated than we thought and led to a lot of changes that needed to be made in the system to make this happen in a good manner here. So I'm just going to go to scheduling preferences here. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and you can see here that there's a button to toggle on and off to display the pet names. So you'll see here if I toggle that off and I go to the schedule here, that the customer we were working with called Drago is now listed by the human name. And if I jump back in here to the scheduling preferences and I toggle this on and I jump back into the schedule, we are going to see now that the name Peter shows up for that service, and that is the pet's name for this account. So I'm going to hang around here and answer some questions. If anyone's been writing in during the webinar, James has been cataloging those for me. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share here for a second. And I'm going to grab any questions that came in here. And you guys can feel free to continue to message in with those questions. James will add them here at the bottom. It looks like we have two questions here. So I'm going to read the first one. How many days for the processing of the credit card to be able to issue a partial credit? I'm assuming you mean a partial refund. I'm not 100% sure. It basically just needs to settle before you can do that. And I believe that that is 24 hours. I can certainly look that up for you, or you can go over to the Braintree portal and they may have some more information for you on that, but I can certainly send that information out. The next question we have is, with the option to apply a prepaid credit, does the client have an opportunity to apply gratuity to the pet sitter? Absolutely, they do. One thing about the automated billing system and prepayment is that if the customer goes over the amount of their invoice and the billing period ends and you've not created another prepaid credit, we'll do a true up at the end where we bill their credit card for anything in excess of the amount of credits that they have. So if they're away on vacation, they've prepaid for their vacation service, but during the time of their vacation, they start adding on different services or gratuity or things like that, it will bill their credit card after the billing period ends, and that rings true as well for gratuity. The next question we have, if a client makes a partial payment after services, does it matter if I apply it as a prepaid credit or an account credit? So if they're paying after services, theoretically, they would be paying it once the invoice is already ready, and you would be just creating a um, apply payment transaction directly from the invoice. But certainly, if you wanted to do it as a prepaid credit or an account credit, you could do that. With a prepaid credit, it is going to charge their payment method if they have credit card. So if they hand you a check or cash, but also have a credit card on file, you're going to want to do that and just make sure that you apply it as a cash credit. So hopefully I've answered that question for you. The next question we have is, could we give an example of when we might add a primary service line item under a customer invoice rather than adding a booking straight to the schedule? So one of the big use cases that came up for this was when you're out on a service, you've already started it, and the customer gives you a call and says, hey, I know I was booked for 30 minutes. Do you think you could do an hour for us? And you say yes. Under that circumstance, you could go into the invoice directly after you finish the appointment, delete the 30-minute appointment, and just add a new invoice line item for a 60-minute appointment and take care of all the transactions right in the invoice. The other thing that might happen is someone asks you for a last-minute appointment. Maybe you're right around the corner from them already. You decide to go do it. You don't really want to add the service into the schedule. I'm just making this up. You could go right into the invoice and create the transaction for them there. So hopefully that answers your question. It looks like we don't have any more questions here. To anybody who added questions, hopefully I answered those for you. If not, go ahead and shoot a message in real quick and I can expand on that answer for you. So I'll wait another minute or so and see if any other questions come in. So James preempted a big question that we get on support, which are when are packages coming? And the answer is, we hope to have those coming later this year. We are going to be having another webinar, I believe, to discuss what the roadmap is for this year. So this webinar was hopefully successful. I hope you all liked it, and we'll go ahead and get more scheduled. It looks like we had another message come in asking about a simpler way to schedule pet sitting. I know that's a big request that we get, especially surrounding being able to schedule multiple times at the same time you're scheduling one appointment. So for example, if you're doing a pet sitting appointment where you're going at maybe 8 a.m., 12 p.m., and 8 p.m., you'd want to schedule those services all at the same time. That is something that we're going to be working on. I don't have a timeline right now, but as soon as we have more information, we'll make it available. I know the other pet sitting question we get sometimes is the ability to just put in the start date and the end date and do what I just described. So that'll all kind of be part of that. Let's see, we have another question here. So any plan to change the way the client selects the date and time? I've had a client complain about the calendar slider they use if they are booking out several weeks or months. Real quick to the person who asked that question, are you talking about the scheduling page where you move the calendar back and forth, or are you referring to the calendar within the booking form? Um, we really haven't heard any complaints about the calendar picker, but certainly if you want to message into support, um, I think we can talk more about it then when we kind of have a clearer idea of exactly what the issue is. But I do want to say that we will be addressing a better scheduling experience in the upcoming mobile app. So one thing we are excited about is we started completely redeveloping the mobile apps. We're going to start with the staff app. We're going to continue on with the customer app, and using the feedback that we've got over the last several years of the mobile apps. We hope to have a lot of improvement there, especially surrounding offline check-in. We know that sometimes that's a little bit of a finicky situation, and we really want to improve it. There's some new technology available to us we're going to implement in the new apps. The last time around, offline check-in was sort of an issue that came up after the fact, and we sort of built an offline check-in to work within the current app. And in the next app, our approach is to build the app to be offline first. So we shouldn't have any issues when there isn't an internet connection, which is, highly dependent when you're using apps. We have another question coming in. I'm just reading through it real quick. You can disable the weekend surcharge. All you would do is navigate into the smart charges section. So if I share my screen here with you real quick, I can very quickly show you how to do that. So if you go into the settings here, smart charges, and you don't want to charge that weekend smart charge anymore, you can go ahead and just turn it off right there, and it'll no longer automatically apply to the invoice. Unfortunately, with weekend and holiday surcharges, and I think this might be what you were getting at, um, you can't disable them from the actual appointment. This is due to recurring appointments. They're just really complicated. And one of the issues is that those charges need to be locked in when the appointment is started. Basically, what happens is when a sitter starts the appointment, it pulls that service out from the recurrence and looks to see which day it is at the time that that happens, and applies those charges based on starting the appointment. So you can remove them from the invoice after the fact, very soon after the fact, given that everything's in real time. But unfortunately, the option is either to have it enabled or disabled. You can't remove it like one at a time from the actual appointment. So we'll continue to wait a minute or two here, give people the opportunity to ask any more questions that they have. A couple of people have messaged in asking if they'll be able to review the webinar after the fact. We are recording this, so we'll go ahead and get that uploaded tomorrow, most likely, and I'll send a link out to everybody who RSVP'd. All right, everyone. If there's no more questions, I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar. I just want to say thank you to everyone who attended. I did mention it in the beginning, but keep your eye out in the next few days for an invitation to join our private Facebook group. So that's a new thing that we're going to be trying out here. And hopefully everybody likes that. There'll be more information coming in the next couple days. All right, everyone. Thank you so much again for attending. I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar now. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to send those in through support as usual, and we'll answer those as fast as we can.